College football is officially starting, and for this Saturday along with the next dozen, fans are gonna be on the edge of their seats watching the 2023 season. Here I'll talk about some of the best storylines in college football, some of the best matchups, and who have the best odds at winning the championship. And speaking of favorites to win the championship, how can we not talk about the Georgia Bulldogs? Coach Kirby Smart has turned Georgia into the biggest threat currently in the league. They've won back-to-back titles, even dismantling TCU 65-7 in the championship game. Now, the Bulldogs have a chance to do something that hasn't been done since 1936. Win 3 chips in a row. Unfortunately, Stetson Bennett is gone at QB. Carson Beck, who was redshirted just 2 years ago, is about to be the starting quarterback on the best team in America. Although this might be a huge responsibility, remember why Georgia has been so dominant in the first place. Defense. The Bulldog defense added some new players from the transfer portal who are good enough to shut down their opponents. And speaking of opponents, just look at Georgia's schedule for a sec. They really only have 2 tough games, facing Tennessee and Florida on the road. Or else, they're facing teams like Tennessee Martin, UAB. They even replaced the Oklahoma Sooners to play Ball State. If Georgia doesn't go undefeated, that might be the most surprising thing in 2023. The Bulldogs are currently in a dynasty, but these teams might be falling out of theirs. Just last year, Clemson University hit rock bottom, winning just 10 games, and missing the playoffs for the 2nd straight year. And I know that 10 wins might sound really good, but these teams have standards. Vanderbilt and Stanford, they'd be lucky if they get 1 win. But as one of the biggest powerhouses in recent memory, Clemson's either going to bounce back with a stellar season, or put up an even worse record. Another team even more desperate than Clemson is Alabama. We all know that Alabama football was great, but last season was one of their worst seasons in a decade. Losing games they should have won, allowing over 50 points in a game. Worst of all, they barely missed the playoffs to the Horned Frogs. Nick Saban already has a championship caliber team, even without Bryce Young. They of course have a tough schedule, but their hardest games are against LSU, Tennessee, and Texas, and Alabama is hosting. I feel confident enough to say that Alabama's a lock-in for the playoffs, along with Georgia. The other 2 spots are projected to be taken by Ohio State and Michigan. Speaking of these 2, they have had a bit of a rivalry in the Big Ten. Ohio State dominated the Wolverines in the 2000s, winning 15 of their 16 consecutive games against Michigan. Now all of a sudden, Ohio State has lost in consecutive years against Michigan. Last year in 2022, they were even shocked at home to an injured Wolverine squad. Ohio State's winningest coach, Ryan Day, has only lost 6 games in his career. 2 of those have been to Michigan in consecutive years. Now the entire football world is waiting for the Buckeyes to bounce back. On November 25th, they meet in Ann Arbor for one of the best matchups of the year, in a game that will likely determine who will make the playoffs. I personally take Michigan to win their 3rd straight to make the Final Four. A big part in why I chose this is because of their strong offense. JJ McCarthy is returning at QB, with more knowledge and growth and some great weapons on offense, like Blake Corum at running back. McCarthy has a good shot at winning the Heisman Trophy this year. But let's check out some of the other contenders for the Heisman. Of course, there are the big names on the big schools that we should all know. JJ McCarthy on Michigan, Jordan Travis, a leading figure on Florida State, quarterback Quinn Ewers at Texas, Jaden Daniels at LSU, and odds-on favorite is a previous Heisman winner at USC, Caleb Williams. Williams brought USC to their single-season record for total offense in his Heisman-winning season last year. But one name in the Heisman race that is a bit underrated is Michael Penix Jr. In the final year of the Pac-12, everyone is hopping on board for Caleb Williams and USC to win the conference. But up north in Washington, the Huskies are brewing up a talented football squad. Did you know that last year, Washington ranked second nationally in offense? They have monster receivers, a solid defense, and best of all, they're being led by quarterback Michael Penix Jr. I said that he is an underrated Heisman candidate. Penix was basically the #1 passer last year, with a great throwing arm. They're coming into the season as a 10 seed, and are gonna have to face some other tough opponents. Oregon, Oregon State, Utah, and USC are all seeded opponents that can pose a threat to Washington. But if the Huskies win at least 3 of those matchups, and beat their other opponents as well, I have Washington as an underrated Pac-12 champ. And in the final season of the Pac-12's existence, I predict Washington to reach the playoffs. Okay, so here's my final 4 then. Washington, Michigan, Alabama, and Georgia. You might be wondering how Washington would make it over some other very talented Big Ten and SEC schools. Well, teams like USC, Florida State, Penn State, Texas, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and Oregon all seem to have something in common. They always fall apart in the last few games of the season and barely miss the playoffs. LSU and Ohio State are probably my biggest snubs. They are powerhouses, of course, that have just as good a chance of winning the championship as Alabama or Michigan. But LSU has to go on the road to play Florida State, Ole Miss, and Alabama, which might be too tough for Jaden Daniels. The 3-seed Ohio State also has to face Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan, 3 games that could easily be losses. There are many more storylines that will be going on in 2023 that you should probably be looking for. Texas A&M went 5 wins and 7 losses last year in Jimbo Fisher's worst season yet. How will they bounce back? Another Texas threat will be the Longhorns, who have a special matchup against Alabama just next week. Oklahoma football is going up. Northwestern is going down after their hazing scandal. Tulane is ranked, Deion Sanders is coaching at Colorado, and so much more. So please subscribe, thanks for watching, and happy college football season. College football season is officially back. I already posted a video talking about some interesting storylines going on in college football. But now, I am going to actually go through each week of the season. Here we'll cover the best games and events from Week 0 and Week 1 of the 2023 college football season. Now, note that most matchups in Week 1 are pretty unfair games, where big colleges pay little ones to play them, usually resulting in a 50-point blowout. But that didn't stop some insane upsets from happening. So let's dive into Week 0.
We're gonna find out, that's right.
2nd and 5, the handoff to the outside is Monte Watkins, and Watkins breaks this one open. No one's gonna get him a house call.
The Aggies started off the 2023 college football season with that explosive run. And even though they ended up losing to UMass, there was still some more action in Week 0. Notre Dame beat Navy in Dublin, Ireland. Jacksonville State won their first ever D1 game. Also, Caleb Williams showed even more reason why he's a Heisman favorite. He dropped the snap and then continued to throw a bomb for a 76-yard touchdown. Also in the Pac-12, the ranked Utah had to play the Florida Gators, but without quarterback Cam Rising. On Utah's first play, they scored a touchdown, and they didn't stop there. Despite the Gators putting up over twice Utah's passing yards, the Utes won 24-11 at home. Louisville versus Georgia Tech might have been the best game of the week though. You see, Louisville football had been struggling in recent years. This year, they began their season down by 15 points at half. But a fumble... and then a long run gave Louisville a come-from-behind win. Unfortunately for the Yellow Jackets, that was a pretty sad opening night loss at home. But an even sadder loss might be what Nebraska did on Friday. Nebraska is known for finding brutal ways to lose games. On Friday, the Cornhuskers controlled the entire game versus Minnesota, until with a few minutes left in the fourth quarter, a fumble,
on the ground, a fumble! Get Minnesota, get it!
toe tap,
Looking, end zone! Touchdown! Gophers!
and then an interception.
Sims over the middle! Intercepted! Whoa!
Gave Minnesota the come-from-behind win. And once again, Nebraska football still stinks. Now we head into week 1. I said that big programs usually pay small programs to play them, just to get some reps in for the players. So seeded teams like Tulane, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Kansas State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Penn State, USC, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia all blew out their opponents. Also, North Carolina beat their rivals South Carolina, eliminating them from championship contention. But not every team did what they were supposed to. Like, there was one upset this week that you might not have even heard of, and that was Purdue. Purdue was straight out of the Big Ten, and they won the division title last year. Despite losing some players, Purdue's still a talented squad and were slight favorites hosting Fresno State in week 1. They even paid Fresno $1.35 million for the matchup. But in the game, Purdue's defense fell apart. Mikey Keene threw 4 touchdowns, and Fresno State had a chance to win in the final seconds.
Team in 2010. Keene taking a shot, it's Brooks, it's in the end zone! Touchdown Fresno State as number 3 strikes again.
With that, Purdue is officially out of the playoff race. Also, Northern Illinois came into Boston College as 8.5-point underdogs, but ended up winning in overtime. Another overtime thriller was Wyoming upsetting Texas Tech.
4th and 7. Blitz comes. Peasley hit as he throws. It's caught! Touchdown Wyoming! Gillen Borg! Peasley. Scott! Touchdown is in! The point is good! Wyoming wins it!
And you also can't forget about Texas State beating Baylor as 27.5-point underdogs. But by far the biggest shock of week 1 had to be TCU and Colorado. TCU made the national championship game last year, even though they got completely blown out and lost their QB this offseason. TCU is still a very talented team that could compete in the Big 12. And their opponent, Colorado, would join their conference, the Big 12, next year. Colorado made a ton of headlines last year. First, for leaving the Pac-12, but also by hiring the NFL legend Deion Sanders as head coach. Sanders had been coaching at a small school named Jackson State before this, and he was coaching his son, Shadir Sanders, who played quarterback. Well, both ended up transferring to Colorado, who were pretty desperate for a change. You see, the Buffaloes are a Power 5 school, but they only won 1 game last year. The worst record in the league, 1-11. So basically, a team that won just 1 game last year had to go on the road to face a previous national finalist. Obviously, there were a lot of problems for the Buffaloes. So Deion Sanders just walked into Boulder, Colorado and changed the entire football squad. A whole new lineup, 86 new players, 2 of them his own sons, were brought to Colorado, which brought a lot of criticism and controversy to Sanders. Everyone doubted him, and so did Vegas. Going into TCU, the 17 seed, Colorado were 21-point underdogs. So let's jump into the game. Colorado started off strong with a long touchdown drive in their first possession, but TCU answered back with a touchdown of their own in the second quarter. The rest of the first half was really just long deliberate drives that led to touchdowns, with a couple missed field goals and turnovers in between. At halftime, Colorado was up 17-14. Most fans probably thought that Colorado had just had a hot start and TCU wasn't in their rhythm yet. Shedeur Sanders was playing almost spot on at quarterback, but you have to remember that this was his first career FCS game. I mean, he's gotta mess up eventually.
Second down and 10. Sanders, here's a little screen, and they find Edwards. He breaks it back with running room on the move. Edwards down the sideline. Dylan Edwards, touchdown, Colorado!
On the second play of the second half, Colorado scored on a 75-yard touchdown. Now, TCU really had to bounce back. Everyone's been focusing on Colorado. Oh, Deion Sanders this, Deion Sanders that. But TCU has expectations too. They were championship contenders last year, and a loss here could basically ruin their title hopes. Not to mention, they're at home as heavy favorites. So the Horned Frogs scored a quick touchdown on their next possession, and a 23-yard score later in the third.
As he skips into the end zone.
At this point, both teams were playing great on offense. Shedeur took the lead for the Buffaloes. Then Chandler Morris ran 20 yards for a TCU score. Shedeur once again made impressive passes to give Colorado another lead. But then the Horned Frogs had an explosive 86-yard kickoff return to give the lead back to TCU. By this point, Colorado had shocked all of their doubters. Even if they lost this game, the Buffaloes could say that they have a talented roster that could be competitive. But Shedeur had the ball with 7 minutes left in the game, down by 4. On 4th and 2, Deion Sanders made the call to go for it, and scored. TCU had a 4th down of their own with the game on the line, but they fell short and lost at home. With that, Colorado won just as many games as they did last year, in just week 1. Quarterback Shedeur Sanders had basically a perfect game. No interceptions, 4 touchdowns, an 80% passing percentage, and best of all, 500 passing yards. No Buffalo's quarterback has ever done that. You can't expect Colorado to play this good every week. They played almost perfect and still only won by 3 points. But in the end, Colorado shocked TCU on the road. TCU ended up having a bunch of bad turnovers and bad defensive mistakes that were probably the difference in this game. But nevertheless, the Horned Frogs are officially eliminated from championship contention.
20. Calandria's got to get rid of it, and he does. Deep ball with a man open, and it's incomplete. Starling was open.
Is to win here in this place. What does it mean to you and to your program to get a win like this on the road?
Well, I didn't want to tell the guys that they were 52-1 in their last 53 games, so I guess they're 52-2 now.
The first few weeks of college football are complete chaos, where no one really knows how good a team actually is until later on in the season. There were many great games and upsets in week 2, so let's quickly cover them. 3 games were played on Sunday. Oregon State dominated to keep the Pac-12 undefeated at 13-0. Northwestern experienced the consequences of their hazing scandal on the football field. But best of all was when 5-seed LSU had to go on the road to face the 8-seed Florida State. Even though LSU was representing the SEC and Florida State the ACC, they both had something in common: Heisman quarterbacks. LSU had Jayden Daniels at QB in his second year there. In his first year, he even led the Tigers to a win over Alabama. Then, Florida State was being led by Jordan Travis, another talented QB. This hyped matchup started off pretty close. Jayden Daniels brought LSU down the field, but got sacked on 4th down at the goal line. Then on 4th and 1 in the red zone, Daniels was sacked again. Despite these mistakes, LSU actually had a 3-point lead at half. But after some kind of motivational halftime speech, Florida State turned on the Jets. Explosive plays led to touchdowns, and LSU's offense was being shut down. Sacks and interceptions and punts prevented the Tigers from scoring in basically the entire second half. So in the end, Florida State won 45-24. For LSU, the Tigers had way too many mistakes in this game. LSU had a lot of hype and expectations coming into the season. I mean, Heisman quarterback, championship contender, and tough defense. But after this blowout loss, the entire season feels crushed and their playoff hopes seem very slim. I'm not saying it's over yet, but Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Alabama are still on the schedule. But for Florida State, Jordan Travis threw 4 touchdowns and knocked out the 5-seed. Just one day later, another top seed fell. The number 9 seed Clemson Tigers were 13-point favorites going into their rivals Duke. The game was close at half, but soon turned into a blowout. Despite the Tigers' offense putting up over 400 yards, more than Duke, their mistakes turned out to be costly for Clemson. A blocked field goal in the first half, then another blocked field goal in the second. Then in the red zone again, a fumble deep in Duke territory. Now it's 1st and goal at the Duke 1-yard line. Guess what happened?
Phil Maffa. Maffa gets the ball. It's picked up by Stinson at the 20. Stinson being chased by Klubnik at midfield. Klubnik tracks him down and maybe saves a touchdown. But what a fortunate bounce with Stinson scooping it up and rolling it back some 70 yards.
Then Clemson had a turnover on downs, interception, and another turnover on downs. 7 turnovers that kept Clemson's score at 7 points in a 28-7 loss. Duke might have just had their biggest win in football history, but the real reason for the win might have been because of Clemson's sloppiness. Half of their mistakes happened on ordinary plays. So it might be early to call it, but with Florida State, North Carolina, and Notre Dame still on the schedule, this embarrassing loss just sent Clemson out of playoff contention. Once Week 2 began, some more Power 5 teams got eliminated. Teams like Illinois got blown out by Kansas. Iowa State fell short to Iowa at the Cyhawk game. Pittsburgh somehow lost as home favorites. And then Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech, NC State, and a lot more. But Week 2 also eliminated some of the stronger contenders in college football. The 23 seed Texas A&M was neck and neck with Miami until this happened.
On the return for the Canes. Catches a seam. Here goes Smith. Would you look at what we got going on at Hard Rock, folks? How about it? 98 yards.
From then on out, 3 more turnovers crushed A&M's title hopes. Number 24 Tulane was also neck and neck with Ole Miss, but some bad turnovers late in the game also knocked him out. Then the 19 seed Wisconsin were also killed by turnovers and got upset by Washington State. There was one more huge upset in Week 2 that we will cover later in this video. Now let's cover the conference that is about to disband next year, the Pacific 12. This year will be the last year the Pac-12 can make a statement in football, and so far they have. The Pac-12 conference has been undefeated after Week 1. and that streak continued coming into week 2. Many question if Deion Sanders and Colorado could keep their same rhythm from that win over TCU. Well, 4 bad turnovers by Nebraska gave Colorado their second win. The 12-seed Utah faced Baylor in a thriller and barely squeaked out a win to make the Pac-12 15-0. The Oregon Ducks had a tough challenge, going into Texas to face Texas Tech. But the Ducks came back down double digits and were barely leading late.
47 seconds left. Second down, pressure, and it's intercepted! It is intercepted by Jeffrey Bossa, and he's going to return it for a pick six!
So the Pac-12 went to 16-0. UCLA and USC and Oregon State and Washington won, and then Washington State upset Wisconsin 31-22. But sadly, the Pac-12 streak ended at 21. Arizona State, California, and Stanford all lost in the Pac, thereby eliminating all of their championship hopes. Now we're gonna check out 3 of some of the best games in week 2, all of them going into overtime.
State family ready to welcome Arizona for the first time ever. Do that now in a pro-style system. You gotta know what the defense is doing. Here's Tulu Griffin on the catch inside the 10. He is at the pylon. And in, touchdown, Mississippi State. And it is well good. Put that one out all the way at the base of the building. Fake to him, they set up the screen, and a bounce outside for Pittman to the end zone. Touchdown, Mississippi State. Conversion to stay alive. Pressure up the middle. Delore having to backpedal. Now hangs the U-turn. Still scrambling. And on the run up the sideline, he stays on his feet, and he gets tripped up just short, it seems. James Delore did everything except get that last half a yard.
It's the city battle for the Bayou Bucket. Less than 5 miles separate. Smith throws it up, has a man. Touchdown. Daniels hands it off straight up the gut. Touchdown. Smith for 2 to Golden. He's not able to haul it in, and Rice wins the football game in double overtime. In this city battle, the Bayou Bucket belongs to the Owls.
There's a transfer out of there is absurd.
Hampton wide open running. 30, 25, 20, 10, 5, touchdown Carolina. Spot. He missed it. And we go to overtime at Kenan Stadium. Drake May scores. Snap, pressure, Aguilar, back foot throw, Davis, incomplete, no flags. Tar Heels win.
North Carolina's season is still alive after that thriller, but this final team's season might be hanging on a thread. And that is surprisingly the best team in college football, Alabama. The Crimson Tide are led by the legendary coach Nick Saban, and they're a 3 seed. Last year, the Tide missed the playoffs, but they did end up beating the Texas Longhorns in Texas that season. This year, they had a rematch, but this time in Tuscaloosa. One thing you gotta know is that nobody beats Alabama in Alabama, even a talented team like the 11 seed Texas. But in the first half, Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers controlled the game and their defense locked down Alabama. Quarterback Jalen Milroe had many shots to bring Alabama to a lead, but each drive ended in punts and disappointment. At the end of the third, Bama finally took the lead.
Milroe again has to elude pressure, launches downfield, and it's caught for a touchdown by Jermaine Burton.
But when it seemed like the Tide might run away with it, a 50-yard gain by Quinn Ewers gave Texas the touchdown and the lead. On the first play of Bama's next drive, Milroe intercepted, and Texas scored again. In the matter of seconds, Alabama was now down double digits at home to, I'd say, an inferior opponent. They got within 3 points in the fourth, but Texas shut the door in Tuscaloosa.
Really showing tonight.
Lewis in the pocket, watching downfield. Mitchell, touchdown, Texas!
Texas played much better than Alabama with more yards and less turnovers, and came out with one of the biggest wins in recent memory. The Longhorns will finally be legitimate contenders again for the championship. But Alabama, on the other hand, is slipping away from the playoff race yet again. Because they only have one loss and because it's Alabama, I'm not ruling them out yet, but they have to beat Tennessee, LSU, and Ole Miss to make it there. Anyway, subscribe, and I'll see you later. College football is back for week 3. Now, there were some great games in the first 2 weeks. Alabama versus Texas, Colorado versus TCU. But the games in week 3 ended up being just as crazy, if not even more. So here I'll simply cover the top 25 teams in the nation, how they did, and how their chances are at a national title. There were a couple big upsets that featured unranked teams. Arkansas lost at home to BYU 38-31. Cincinnati was knocked out in overtime. And then there was Oklahoma State. I mean, how did they pay South Alabama $300,000 to get absolutely creamed? Anyway, the 25 seed Iowa hosted Western Michigan and dominated despite a slow start. UCLA smoked the Eagles, and Washington State continued their dream season with a 64-point win. Miami also won convincingly, Duke dominated too, and the Blue Devil rivals, North Carolina, also got back on the right track. After that, number 19 Oklahoma put up 66 points. Now we're going to cover Colorado football in another edition of Primetime. This week, Deion Sanders was insulted by the Colorado State head coach, saying that he looked informal and should take his glasses and hat off when speaking to adults. I guess that after this comment, the beef was real. Now, everyone expected Colorado to crush Colorado State. The entire Colorado team was confident and cocky heading into the game. But once the game began, the Buffaloes looked entirely discombobulated. A bunch of punts and sad offense in the first half only held them to 14 points. Thankfully, the Colorado defense was getting some stops, but that supposedly elite offense, led by Shedeur Sanders, was just god-awful. Of course, Colorado made the impossible happen in their Cinderella season. Down by 11 in the fourth, a 98-yard touchdown drive and win in double overtime sealed the win. After this 43-35 win, Colorado and Deion Sanders were now legit. That win may have been lucky, but the Buffaloes are going to have to face their hardest challenge yet. Next week on the road against Oregon. Anyway, let's continue. Number 17 Ole Miss dominated as well, and then Oregon State kept the Pac-12 strong by beating San Diego State. One of the best games of the week was definitely played between Missouri and Kansas State. Last year these two teams faced, and K-State embarrassed Missouri and blew them out. And some of that anger seemed to flare early in the game for the Tigers.
This helped in a leadership standpoint, a big deal. Now Cook's going to throw the deep ball, and Burton's past the defense! Touchdown, Luther Burton! 47 yards!
For the rest of the first half, Mizzou would control the game and get up 17-14. But let's learn about their opponent, Kansas State, real fast. K-State is out of the Big 12, and they had a great season last year. They were the only team other than Georgia to beat the finalists, TCU. They went into this season as a 15th seed, led by quarterback Will Howard. Facing Missouri on the road was the first real challenge the Wildcats would have this season. and Kansas State really started to look like a 15 seed in the second half. The defense forced punts and the offense took the lead, 24-17. But in the fourth quarter, Brady Cook and Mizzou stormed back. A 26-yard touchdown gave the Tigers the edge, and Mizzou had the ball tied at 27 with 1 minute left. Some checkdowns brought the ball to Kansas State territory for the final play of the game, a 61-yard field goal for the win.
It is Brooks. Mevis kick on the way. It's good! There's a flag down. Missouri at the moment has walked it off.
Missouri just put up one of their biggest wins in recent memory after a crazy 61-yarder. 61 yards is unlikely for an NFL kicker to make it, nevertheless a college kid. But kicker Harrison Mevis drilled the field goal straight down the middle. Missouri will probably be ranked next week, but Kansas State might not. The Wildcats watched their division rivals TCU go undefeated last year and make the championship. And the Wildcats had the talent to do the same this year. But Missouri ended up fighting harder today, so with this loss, Kansas State is officially eliminated from championship contention. 14 Jaden Daniels and LSU blew out Mississippi State, with Daniels putting up the best completion percentage in Tigers history. 13 Oregon scored 55 points on Hawaii, and number 12 Utah dominated their way to 3-0. But then another upset occurred on Saturday. Number 11 Tennessee had to go into the swamp, and they were just simply overpowered by the Gators the entire game. The Tennessee players got chippy since their offense struggled to score, turning the ball over 4 times despite putting up more yards than Florida. Basically, Trevor Etienne, brother of Travis on the Jags, got Florida to a 26-7 lead in the first half, and Tennessee ultimately couldn't come back from it. Despite this beatdown, I'm not eliminating the Volunteers yet, since wins over Alabama and Georgia can send them to the playoffs. Number 10 Alabama might have had one of their ugliest games in recent memory. Last week they lost at home versus Texas. One more loss would mean no playoff contention and another disappointing season for Alabama football. The Crimson Tide looked to bounce back with an easy matchup against South Florida, but that plan went horribly. Nick Saban made the decision before the game to bench quarterback Jalen Milroe. Their second stringer played horrible and scored 3 points in the first half. Then their third stringer didn't look good either, getting sacked numerous times to, I guess, a ferocious South Florida defense. Alabama's quarterback play was horrible. The O-line couldn't guard crap, and they only scored 17 points as 33.5-point favorites. Even though Alabama did pull out a W, expect them to be out of the top 10 next week. Unlike Alabama, Notre Dame didn't mess around and continued their perfect season against Central Michigan. But probably the most impressive win of the week came from Washington. In a game expected to be competitive, turned into a blowout. Michael Penix Jr. proved his Heisman capabilities by beating an undefeated Michigan State on the road, 41-7. This performance should definitely send Washington into the top 5. Number 7 Penn State had some pretty bad memories of Illinois. In 2021, their title hopes were crushed when Illinois went onto their turf and shocked them in 9 overtimes. But this year, Penn State got their payback and smoked Illinois on the road. The 6th-seed Ohio State was lifted by a 35-point second quarter. The defense forced 7 turnovers and offense put up 560 yards in their dominating 53-point win over Western Kentucky. But the Buckeyes can't celebrate this victory yet, since next week they have a very tough game on the road against the 9-seed Notre Dame. Number 4 Texas continued their hot streak against Wyoming. After that, Florida State hit the road for the first time this year. And instead of breezing past an easy opponent in Boston College, FSU was given a scare. The Seminoles almost blew a 21-point lead, but Jordan Travis barely squeaked them to a win. Michigan might have been one of the few top 5 teams that actually took care of business. And finally, number 1 in the nation, Georgia. Like most other teams in Week 3, the Bulldogs got to a slow start. Spencer Rattler and South Carolina got up 14-3 at half, on the road while being 27.5-point underdogs. But after some kind of inspirational halftime speech, Georgia's defense shut down the Gamecocks, and Carson Beck led the Bulldogs' offense. So Georgia won 24-14 and kept their winning streak alive at 20. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Week 4 of the 2023 college football season might have had some of the best matchups of the year. So in this video, I will simply cover the best of them, ending it off with the legendary game between Ohio State and Notre Dame. Please subscribe, and let's jump into it. BYU vs Kansas was actually a pretty underrated game, but some turnovers gave BYU their first loss. Then 2 more undefeated teams faced off, but Michigan's talent proved to be too much for Rutgers. Missouri kept their perfect season alive in a close game against Memphis, but Auburn's season came to an end on the road. And finally, Arkansas and LSU went down to the wire, but a game-winning field goal kept LSU's season alive. There were some crazy games in the Pac-12 this week, featuring 6 ranked opponents battling against each other. First off, number 14 Oregon State at number 21 Washington State. Both teams had explosive runs and crazy throws that generated almost 1,000 yards of total offense. However, Washington State controlled most of the game and knocked the Beavers out. Number 22 UCLA at number 11 Utah. This game ended up being the opposite of that last one, since it was mainly a defensive battle. In fact, Utah's defense single-handedly took down the 22-seed UCLA. The very first play of the game was a pick 6, and Utah continued to have 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and allow 7 points in a 14-7 win. Number 19 Colorado at number 10 Oregon. Colorado's Cinderella season lasted 3 weeks with Deion Sanders, but it came to a screeching halt against Oregon. The Buffaloes had to go on the road versus a no-nonsense Oregon Ducks, who felt disrespected for not getting any attention or respect. This entire game was just simply dominated by Oregon. Bo Nix led the offense to 42 points, and the defense shut down Colorado and pressured Shadir Sanders on every single play. Colorado was held to basically 0 points, with only a lame touchdown in garbage time. Meanwhile, Oregon had 500 yards of offense and 30 first downs in a crazy 42-6 win over the most viewed team in the nation. Next up is number 24 Iowa at number 7 Penn State. Penn State is known for being a top 10 team that falls out of the playoff picture year after year. But this year, it seems like they're actually going to be a force to be reckoned with, because Penn State just shut out the 24-seed Iowa 31-zip. Their defense forced 4 fumbles and allowed 79 yards all game. Probably the most dominating win of the week. Florida State vs Clemson has been a pretty lopsided rivalry in recent years. Clemson's championship caliber team has beaten FSU 7 straight times before this game. But this year, the roles have reversed. Clemson has little hope of reaching the championship after a loss at Duke, and one more loss will officially end their season. Meanwhile, Florida State has put up one of their best seasons in years, led by quarterback Jordan Travis, and they're a 4 seed entering the game. In the first half, both teams played hard, but Clemson had the slight edge. In the third, the Tigers were looking to run away with it until this happened.
For their team this year. Here's a blitz, and Klubnik didn't see it coming. He got blasted by Kalen DeLoach, who has the ball and is heading toward the end zone.
Then the game went into overtime. Now at this point the Seminoles hadn't led a single time all game, and were pretty lucky to actually still be in it. I mean, on the road against a division rival with only 22 rushing yards. But in overtime, Jordan Travis threw a dot for a touchdown, and Clemson turned it over on downs, giving Florida State a statement win in Death Valley. Number 15 Ole Miss at number 13 Alabama. Alabama has been in a quarterback slump lately, and the Rebels were looking to take advantage of that and beat them for the first time in a while. Ole Miss held them to only 6 points in the first half, but Nick Saban and Alabama proved to be too much in the end. Ole Miss's high-scoring offense struggled against Alabama's tough D, and they were held to just 10 points. For the Rebels, this loss might have just ended their title hopes, but the bigger story might be Alabama's much-needed bounce-back win. But no doubt, the best game of the week was also the most hyped game of the week, featuring two top 10 schools. Number 6 in the nation, Ohio State, a team with 8 national titles and players like Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, and Nick Bosa. And the team hosting is number 9 Notre Dame, an independent school that quarterback Joe Montana played for that has their own broadcasting channel, NBC. But despite Notre Dame and their talented squads, the Irish have had a reputation of always falling short of playoff contention in heartbreaking fashion. This has been happening for the last 30 years, but Notre Dame had hope this year. They had a chance to pull off a statement win against The Ohio State, and they have their home crowd cheering them on. So let's jump into a recap of one of the best games of the year. The first half of Notre Dame vs. Ohio State was an all-out defensive battle. Notre Dame drove the ball down the field but was stopped short on a 4th and 1. Then they missed a field goal on their next drive. Ohio State would take the ball to the 1-yard line, but on 4th down they were stopped short of the end zone. To end the first half, the Buckeyes finally got some points on the board to take a 3-0 lead at half. Ohio State's defense continued to dominate, stopping Notre Dame on another 4th and 1. Then this happened.
Ohio State's benefit, and now a big game for Henderson. Let's play outside. Henderson's got speed down the sideline. Nobody's going to catch him. Touchdown, Ohio State. 61 yards.
Down 10-0 at home, Notre Dame was really in some trouble. But in the next possession, Notre Dame drove the ball 75 yards down the field for a touchdown. Their defense got a stop, and another long drive led by running backs gave the Irish the touchdown and the lead. Now the roles had reversed, and the pressure was now on Ohio State, down 14-10. But the Buckeyes offense also brought the ball down the field. Now, on 3rd and 1, deep in Notre Dame territory, Ohio State ran for nothing. Okay, there's 4 minutes left in the game, down by 4 points on 4th down. Ohio State chose to not kick a field goal and go for it.
McCord handed off, Abuka around the edge. He is stonewalled. Notre Dame gets the stop, and they get the football back.
Should have kicked the field goal. Well, there goes the season. Ohio State is over. Done. But wait, Notre Dame's going backwards. They're gonna have to punt it and give Ohio State one more shot. One more drive with 1.5 minutes to win the game. The Buckeyes need a touchdown, but Kyle McCord has to go 65 yards to do it. Meanwhile, all Notre Dame's defense has got to do is stop them, something they've been doing all game long. They quickly got them to a 3rd and 10.
McCord uncorks. It's complete. 1st down, Ohio State to Abuka.
1st down. Okay, now it's 4th and 7. Now it's done.
Looks like bracket coverage on Marvin down here on the right.
McCord steps up over the middle. 1st down. Julian Fleming with the extra extension.
Fine, that's okay. Now it's freaking 3rd and 19. I mean, the game has got to be over now. right?
Three-man rush.
McCord floats it, end zone, caught short. Abuka makes the catch inside the one.
Notre Dame has definitely blown this game. Dropped interceptions and big gains have brought Ohio State to the 1-yard line. But with 7 seconds left, they have just 2 more plays.
McCord rolls, fires, incomplete. Harrison, the intended target.
Good, it's the last play of the game and they're probably going to throw it again.
Anderson. If you're Notre Dame, you got to be alert for a run here as the last play of the game.
Give it to him, Trainer up the middle. He's in. Touchdown, Ohio State. They walk it off at Notre Dame Stadium.
Holy crap. A run up the middle caught the defense off guard and just gave Ohio State the walk-off touchdown. I talked about how Notre Dame has lost some heartbreaking games in the last 30 years. But this one might have been the worst of them all. I mean, how in the world did Ohio State score a touchdown in a situation like that? I'm not saying that Notre Dame's season is over, but this game was very winnable and could have finally been the turning point in Notre Dame football. Now they have a tough matchup against Duke next week. Anyway, subscribe and I'll see you later. Week 5 of the college football season was pretty eventful, so let's jump right into it. On Friday, 2 undefeated teams played. Louisville stayed perfect after a sloppy interception, but the 10-seed Utah stood no chance against Oregon State with their star quarterback Cam Rising injured. Utah's got some tough road games upcoming, so this 21-7 defeat just sent them out of playoff contention. Georgia had to go on the road for the first time this year, this time against Auburn. Numerous turnovers early in the game got Georgia to yet another slow start, but the 1 seed kept their composure, and a 40-yard touchdown to Brock Bowers gave them the 27-20 victory and kept their win streak alive at 22. Also in the SEC, Ray Davis from Kentucky absolutely destroyed the Florida defense and ran for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns in a beatdown. Next week, Florida should fall out of the top 25 and Kentucky get in. Now, one of the most popular things to keep track of during the college football season, other than reaching the playoffs, is the Heisman race. The Heisman is the award given to the best college football athlete each year. So heading into week 5, 8 quarterbacks were in the Heisman race. Let's see how each one of them did. Number 8, J.J. McCarthy led Michigan to an easy win over Nebraska to bring them to 5-0. Dylan Gabriel kept Oklahoma undefeated too. Then quarterback Sam Hartman led Notre Dame to a crazy win on the road, which I will cover a little bit later. But coming into this week, the number 6 Heisman favorite was Jayden Daniels from LSU. Jayden Daniels lost a lot of rating from that loss at FSU, but a win at Ole Miss would definitely help his chances. More importantly, a win at Ole Miss would also keep LSU's season alive, since losing 2 games essentially ruins a school's chance at the playoffs. But in the first quarter, LSU fell into a deep hole. A turnover by Daniels would help Ole Miss jump to an early lead.
Over the middle again, in stride, behind the defense, Jordan Watkins, Painter, touchdown, 63 yards.
Down by 2 scores, Jayden Daniels finally started playing well. Some long runs and passing touchdowns would cut the deficit to 3 at half. On the first drive of the second half, Jayden Daniels rushed in for their first lead of the night. They extended that to 9 points with a 34-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. But sadly for LSU, they couldn't keep the 49-40 lead. Jackson Dart and Ole Miss would lead a clutch drive late in the fourth to give Ole Miss the lead.
They'll probably be thinking about using their timeouts. Harris makes a man miss. Painter, touchdown.
Jaden Daniels gave it his best shot to save the season, but his throws fell short and LSU lost 55-49. Just like that, LSU, the hyped team entering the season, just got eliminated from the college football playoffs just 5 weeks into the season. The 5th best QB, Jordan Travis, had a bye. Number 4, Bo Nix, scored 4 touchdowns for Oregon, and 3 Quinn Ewers in Texas smoked the 24th seed Kansas. After that, the QB with the 2nd best chances at winning the Heisman was Caleb Williams. On Saturday, Caleb Williams led USC to a big win on the road against Deion Sanders in Colorado. He threw for 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in a statement win at Boulder. If Williams keeps up this consistency, he's bound to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft, and maybe also win his 2nd straight Heisman. But the leading figure currently in the Heisman race is definitely Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. Penix has thrown for over 350 yards in all 5 opening games. Next week, we'll see how he does against his toughest challenge yet, against another undefeated Pac-12 school, Oregon. Okay, so there was one more exciting game in Week 5 that I will cover, and that was Notre Dame versus Duke. Now, let's get some context. The 11th seed Notre Dame lost last week in heartbreaking fashion against Ohio State. On the very last play, Ohio State got a walk-off touchdown to crush the Irish's hopes. Meanwhile, Duke has stood atop the ACC with an undefeated record. In Week 1, they upset the heavy favorites Clemson, and have now worked their way to the 17 seed. This game would end up being so important that whoever lost between Notre Dame or Duke would be eliminated from playoff contention. Notre Dame started off strong, since on their very first drive, the Irish brought the ball down the field and scored a touchdown. Then the Irish's defense would continue to control the first half and shut out Duke. Duke got in the red zone a couple times, but a couple missed field goals would prove costly for them. Coming into half, Duke was in trouble. On their home turf, they were being shut out 10-0 with their season on the line. But the Blue Devils didn't give up. 2 touchdown drives would result in 14 points and the lead. Duke would get the ball again and run the clock all the way to 2.5 minutes left before punting to Notre Dame. For Notre Dame, now the pressure was on them. With 2 minutes left, Sam Hartman had to go 95 yards in a game where the offense had been struggling all day long.
Hartman, and who else? He finds Mitchell Evans' tight end, and they...
Notre Dame would bring the ball all the way to Duke territory with 1 minute left. But wait, Notre Dame just got called for a PI. A couple dropped interceptions later, and now they're facing a 4th and 16 with barely any time left. Well, I guess that's a wrap. Good job, Duke, you pulled off the comeback win. And Notre Dame, well, better luck next year.
Hartman has a chance to run for it. Can Sam get there? He came up short against Ohio State, but tonight he moves the chains on 4th down. A 17-yard run on 4th and 16. Estime is loose. Audric Estime. Touchdown, Notre Dame.
Last week, Notre Dame lost in improbable fashion to Ohio State. But this week, the roles reversed, and Sam Hartman was the one who lucked his team to a win. Unfortunately for Duke, though, their great start to the season has come to an end, since the Blue Devils are officially eliminated from playoff contention. Subscribe, and I'll see you later. There are 22 undefeated teams left in 2023. You obviously have to be very good to be undefeated, but there is one undefeated team that really stands out from the others. Washington. Washington has no doubt proven to be the best team in college football. Their quarterback Michael Penix so far has the most passing yards of 2,000, averaging 446 per game. Their total offense put up a league-best 569 yards per game, averaging 46 points per game. Statistically, they are great, and in my opinion, the best team in football. But next week, they'll have their first real test against the 8 seed Oregon. But while the Huskies are the best, Marshall was the worst. Despite being undefeated, Marshall was barely won game after game, and finally lost a game against NC State. There were also some more low-profile D1 schools with no losses coming into Week 6. James Madison and Air Force had a bye. Liberty squeaked a win on Thursday, but 24 seed Fresno State fell short on the road, and their great start has come to an end. But you can't forget about the number 25 seed Louisville. Louisville got their first statement win of the season by beating the 10 seed Notre Dame. This was largely thanks to their defense forcing 7 turnovers in a 33-20 win. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, they just got their second loss. It's hard to go undefeated when facing 4 ranked teams in 4 straight weeks, but the Irish are nevertheless officially eliminated from playoff contention. Maryland at Ohio State was a close battle in the Big Ten that turned into a blowout. Ohio State proved why they're the 4th best team in the nation by dominating the 4th quarter. In the SEC, the 1 seed Georgia hosted the 20 seed Kentucky. Georgia had been struggling in recent weeks, but this game, the title favorites killed the Wildcats 51-13. Huge win for the Bulldogs, but unfortunately, there were some other undefeated teams that fell. The 21 seed Missouri faced LSU in a high-scoring game. Mizzou put up over 500 yards, scored 39 points, and fought till the end, but fell short after a pick 6. Then the 13 seed Washington State was just physically overpowered at the Rose Bowl. But probably the worst of them all is what happened to Miami. The Miami Hurricanes played a sloppy game, but still pulled out the win over Georgia Tech. All they have to do is kneel down and get the win.
I don't know what Miami is doing.
That's it. Here's Chaney, the straight ahead, tackled, and the ball popped out.
You gotta read the clock. I mean, you gotta read the card. I mean, to me,
Georgia Tech has it with 26 seconds left. Kyle Kennard comes up with the fumble.
you should not be running the football. I mean, you should be taking a knee. As soon as you got that first down, they used that last time out. As long as you milk it all the way down, you don't need to be doing this. You certainly don't need to be fighting for extra yards.
Is it out as he hits the ground, or is he on the ground?
Just like that, the 17 seed lost at home in a ridiculous way. I mean, there was no reason to run the ball there. So anyway, all of those teams have just been officially eliminated from playoff contention. But you can't forget about the undefeated teams that won pretty convincingly. 5 seed Florida State beat Virginia Tech. North Carolina creamed Syracuse. 2 seed Michigan also took care of business. Then the 9 seed USC beat Arizona in a wild triple overtime game. Watch those highlights if you can. But we have one more game to cover, no doubt the best game of the week. It was a 12 seed Oklahoma at the 3 seed Texas in one of the biggest rivalries in college football. Both schools are gonna face each other for the last time in the Big 12, since next year they're headed to the best conference in football, the SEC. According to the simple rating system, Texas is currently the strongest team in the nation. The Longhorns have been led by quarterback Quinn Ewers, who's averaging 36 points per game. More impressively, Texas has built a lockdown defense that has allowed 13 points per game in 5 games. The reason Texas is ranked number 3 is because they went into Tuscaloosa, Alabama in Week 2 and upset them pretty convincingly. Meanwhile, Oklahoma is kind of flown under the radar and about to play their toughest road game of the season. So Texas is obviously favored and should easily beat Oklahoma. Let's watch them score a quick opening drive touchdown.
Ewers has the football, gets it out, almost stood. He did throw a pick. Right to Gentry Williams, who jumped the route. A huge mistake for Ewers, and OU will take over in...
What the hell? Texas is supposed to be one of the best teams, but what's with all of these mistakes? Another interception at the goal line? Unnecessary penalties? Both teams would answer each other with touchdowns back and forth, but at halftime, Oklahoma would hold the lead 20-17. Dillon Gabriel started the first drive of the second half by working their way down the field and scoring another touchdown. Texas's defense would keep Oklahoma at 27, and their offense would try to tie the game, but a 4th and goal stop made losing a real possibility for Texas. Oh great, a long run by Dillon just sent Oklahoma into field goal range. Now it's really over.
And it will slide wide right.
Texas thankfully got a break there and brought some momentum for their next drive.
Big afternoon. Made the pick early. Now Brooks makes the cut. Big space. Brooks accelerates. Texas touchdown.
With a little over 1 minute left, Texas took a 3-point lead, 30-27, over Oklahoma. So yeah, that was a close one, but it seems like Texas might have just settled this rivalry. But for some reason, with all the pressure on him and a crowd booing his name, quarterback Dillon Gabriel started to get clutch. Gabriel seemed to complete every single pass with less than a minute ticking on the clock. Oklahoma seemed to easily work their way down the field, and they weren't looking to kick a field goal and tie. They wanted a win.
Gabriel. Texas touchdown. Nick Anderson.
Unfortunately for Texas, despite having more yards and more talent than Oklahoma, they fell short at home in a rivalry game. What cost Texas this game might have just been their mistakes. Without 4 turnovers and 9 penalties, the Longhorns would have definitely won this game. Now they're hanging on a thread as their playoff hopes seem very slim. But for Oklahoma, the Sooners just won a crucial game that will definitely send them into the top 10 next week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The craziness in college football continued into Week 7, so here I'll cover 10 of the best games and moments this week, ending it off with a deep dive into Oregon versus Washington. But first, let's cover some ranked teams that were surprisingly shocked this week. Missouri went into the 24 seed Kentucky and blew them out. Oregon State defeated 18 seed UCLA, and Arizona humiliated 19 seed Washington State 44-6 on their home turf. North Carolina stayed undefeated against the 25 seed Miami, but then another undefeated team, Louisville, well, I don't know what happened, but 7 turnovers and a crucial pick 6 ruined their shot at beating Pitt despite being heavy favorites. Just like that, Louisville is now eliminated from playoff contention. Another team that is on the brink of playoff elimination is Caleb Williams and USC. The Trojans' offense laid a turd on the road at Notre Dame, turning the ball over 6 times to a strong Irish defense. This helped Notre Dame jump to an early lead, and a 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown sealed the dub.
Game, and here we go. This is Price bringing it out, trying to return of his own. Now Jadarian Price turning on the Jets. 20-10 touchdown Notre Dame.
USC lost in a 48-20 beatdown. But let's zoom into the 10th best game, Coastal Carolina at App State. Tied at 24 late in the 4th, Coastal turned it over on downs, but then App State fumbled on a big gain, giving Coastal a game-winning field goal. Next up, in a tight game between Fresno State and Utah, Maurice Norris Jr. picked it off to seal the win. Also, the Illinois Fighting Illini shocked Maryland on the road after a game-winning dagger. Rutgers came back from down 18 points late in the 4th to somehow beat Michigan State. Florida also came down double digits and gave the Gators a clutch game-winning drive. And Colorado State came back down from 20 late in the fourth and sealed off the comeback win from a Hail Mary.
Our first win ever against Boise State. One final shot. Tyler Nicolosi chucking it into the end zone. Everybody is there. Is it caught? Is it caught? Colorado State. Dallin Holker makes the catch. It's a miracle in Fort Collins. We're tied up.
Next up, 23 seed Kansas was upset in a high-scoring game. And despite it being a game that not too many college football fans watched, West Virginia at Houston put up a case to be the wildest game of the year. In the fourth quarter, West Virginia would take the 24-21 lead before Houston responded with an explosive drive for a touchdown. Both teams scored again, but West Virginia would be down by 3 points with 1 minute left to score. On 4th and 10, this happened.
10, ball game on the line. Green's pass, caught! Wow. And look out! It's Clement! He might score! He does score! Touchdown, West Virginia!
Now, that was a pretty impressive play by the Mountaineers. But the craziness doesn't end there. On the last play of the game, Houston threw up a final prayer.
15 pass completions in a row. This will be his last, and it's for the football game. If he can get it off. To the end zone. Tipped. And he got it. Touchdown. Holy Toledo. Stephon Johnson does it again.
Now, I honestly don't know how to explain what happened on Friday night with Colorado. Deion Sanders jumped to a 29-zip lead over a weak Stanford team to seemingly end it. But all of a sudden, once the second half came around, Colorado's offense turned cold. Stanford's offense, meanwhile, was running circles around Colorado and somehow tied the game at 36 with a field goal to send it into overtime.
That's where they come, battling. Oh, what a grab! What a highlight! Io Manor! Mind your manners, what a catch!
The throw. He takes it, he traps it to his back of his helmet.
Sanders gonna pass it. Can't find anyone. On the move. Finally gets rid of it. Picked off in the end zone.
A very embarrassing loss for Colorado, and it seems like the Deion effect has kind of run out for the Buffaloes this season. Anyway, a lot of the games in Week 7 were pretty fun, but none were as crucial as the Pac-12 battle between Washington and Oregon. The 8-seed Oregon went on the road to the 7-seed Washington in a very important game that would help shape out the playoff race. Washington has been the most explosive offense so far in college football, led by Heisman favorite Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback. Meanwhile, Oregon has been led by another Heisman candidate, Bo Nix, at quarterback. Bo Nix had orchestrated this offense to many achievements, like scoring 81 points in a game and smoking Colorado. Coming into the game, the winner between these two schools was basically a coin flip. Two unstoppable Pac-12 teams would have to face off in the 115th edition of their rivalry, and for the first time, both teams were ranked in the top 10. In the most recent game of this rivalry, Washington shocked Oregon on the road last year to ruin their season. With angers flaring and the world watching, one of the wildest games of the year was played. So let's deep dive into a full summary of this game. Early in the first half, as most fans expected, this game ended up being an offensive shootout. Michael Penix struck first with a quick touchdown drive, answered by a long touchdown drive by Bo Nix. This would continue on.
Pressure picked up again, launching for the end zone. Oh, touchdown, Jalen Polk. Nix from the pocket, on the move, scanning, throws back end zone, caught, touchdown, Patrick Herbert. Dunze in motion, they pitch it into Jeff Westover, and they bulldoze in. Gets it up, and drives it through.
There were many instances later on that would show the coach's greed to score a touchdown instead of taking free points. Like on the last play of halftime, Oregon was at the goal line, and instead of kicking a field goal, they decided to go for it. This attempt failed, and in the second half, there was yet another goal line stand deep in Washington territory that resulted in 0 points. It seemed like this game might run away from Oregon at this point. Those 4th down fails would get them down by double digits. But out of nowhere, the momentum entirely shifted. The Ducks defense started getting stops. They forced a 3-and-out, and Bo Nix would step up his game.
Easy throw from Nix.
4-man rush, lots of time, launching downfield. Wide open is Franklin. Well, he waited a while to make a huge impact play, but that was it. 30 yards.
Another 3-and-out, and Troy Franklin made another big gain to help Oregon regain the lead, 33-29. By this point, the clock was now ticking for Washington. Michael Penix Jr. would lead a slow drive that went to a 4th and 6 in the red zone. The time to win was now, and the Huskies didn't want to take 3 points, but go for the touchdown.
Pressure comes, Penix delivers, caught, first down and goal.
Oh, thank God. Phew, Washington converted, and now they're at the 1-yard line about to score a touchdown. Okay, let's just hop into the end zone now. Wait, are you kidding me? Stop running it up the middle, do something else. Now it's 4th down and... Holy crap. Washington just turned the ball over. Somehow they couldn't rush for 1 yard, and now there was just 6 minutes left in the game. On 3rd and 4, a great catch by Troy Franklin would give Oregon the guaranteed dub. So great job, Oregon, a win on the road against arguably the best team in the league. But unfortunately, head coach Dan Lanning continued to be aggressive. Oregon was brought to a 4th and 3 where they could have punted the ball away and forced Washington to go the entire length of the field. Instead, the Ducks didn't feel like stalling out the victory. They were going for the kill.
Rolls out, they're going to throw for it. Incomplete! Huskies take over. This gamble does not pay off. And Penix will have a chance to win it.
What the hell? I swear to God, this play calling is the reason Oregon might blow this. And hopefully they don't blow it, since as talented as both these teams are, Oregon's defense has done great and Bo Nix has arguably been the better quarterback. But with 2 minutes left in the game, Michael Penix Jr. would prove himself. In just 2 plays, Washington stormed down the field and scored a touchdown. After being stopped at the goal line their last drive, Washington's shot at winning shrunk to as low as 10%. But out of nowhere, they now had the 36-33 lead. But maybe they left too much time for Oregon. I mean, all they need is a field goal and Bo Nix is throwing very well. So as time expired, Oregon got into field goal range, about to tie it and send this great rivalry into overtime.
Missed it! And the Huskies survive!
It'd be frustrating to see this as an Oregon fan. All the bad play calls and missed opportunities the Ducks had made a difference, but in the end, they had a shot to go to overtime. Sadly, it's hard to see all of that hard work go to waste with a kicker missing a field goal. This would end up being one of the most exciting wins in Washington football history. Well deserved, and the fans stormed the field. Washington, in my opinion, has the best shot in the Pac-12 to make the playoffs, especially with USC and Oregon falling. But with Oregon, don't lose hope, cause the season's not over yet despite the heartbreaker. In fact, we're likely to see a Pac-12 championship rematch between these two to determine who makes the playoffs. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Week 8 of college football had some pretty good matchups, but before we cover those, let's start off with the upset of the year. The University of Virginia had to go on the road against the 10 seed North Carolina as 23.5-point underdogs. Now, let's first get some background. North Carolina have comfortably beat most of the teams they've played, with a win over the 25 seed Miami last week to bring them to 6-0. Meanwhile, Virginia has put up one of the worst starts to a season in franchise history. They got blown out by Tennessee and even lost to James Madison at home, to bring them to a 1-5 record. But it seems like with nothing to lose, Virginia played great. They kept the score close at half, down 17-14. Virginia would take a lead off a touchdown, and North Carolina started to get desperate. Drake May started making some bad mistakes, turning the ball over and then throwing an interception on their last hope. Just like that, Tony Muskett and Virginia won on the road in one of the most unexpected games of the year, and also eliminated North Carolina from the playoffs. Two teams faced a couple weeks ago in one of the games of the year, the 6th seed Oklahoma and the 8th seed Texas. But this week, both teams had a scare from their opponents. Oklahoma stopped UCF on a 2-point conversion, and Texas stopped Houston on a 4th down, to both get W's. But unlike them, another ranked team, Iowa, wasn't so lucky. The Hawkeyes scored on a crazy punt return touchdown, one of the best you'll see, to take a lead late in the game over Minnesota. However, this amazing play that would have gone down in history was overturned because of an invalid fair catch signal, a horrible call that lost Iowa the game. Some more notable games. The 4-seed Florida State got a convincing win against Duke, and Utah's 4th straight dub over USC. In what I'd consider the game of the week, 18-seed Caleb Williams was gonna host the 14-seed Utah Utes. Utah had been without their starting QB, but that didn't stop them from jumping to a 28-14 lead. However, with USC's season on the line, the Trojans would need to climb back into the game.
Here comes Bird again. Intercepted! Kalen Bullock changes the game for the Trojans!
Unfortunately for Caleb, he fumbled the pass and forced USC to take a field goal. So now, USC's defense, who has been known for struggling these last few years, have to get a stop.
Barnes missed him!
Really? A pass? Now USC gets the ball back with plenty of time.
To receive. He wants a chance at this. Here he goes. The electric freshman, Zachariah Branch! Down the sideline, it's Bishop! And he just had enough of an angle!
Well, I guess the Trojans didn't need that time since Williams just cruised into the end zone. Now it was backup quarterback Bryson Barnes' shot to prove himself. With under 2 minutes left, the Utes would get to a 4th and 1 past midfield. They got the first down, but it seems like time might be running out for them.
Second down for Barnes. Pressure coming. He runs. Barnes across the 40, and he's inside the 20. Bryson Barnes, unbeaten as a starter in college football.
Holy crap, Barnes just caught the defense sleeping and just brought Utah into field goal range to win the game on the road and knock out last year's Heisman.
It is good! The Utah Utes sink USC once more in another classic.
What a game, and the Utes just eliminated the Trojans yet again. Speaking of playoff elimination, whoever loses between the 17-seed Tennessee and 11-seed Alabama are practically done for. And Alabama's hosting, so, you know, we can just give them the win. Yeah, Tennessee scored a touchdown on their opening drive, but that's fine. Jalen Milroe knows how to answer, by fumbling to the other team. Well, Alabama's finally got some momentum. Let's just give them the lead.
Going to the end zone. And broken up at the very last second. And intercepted.
Yes, it was right at the end of it.
Tennessee quickly scored a touchdown and took a 20-7 lead at half. Alabama's biggest halftime deficit since Joe Burrow played him. But although some of the fans in Tuscaloosa did, you can never lose hope with Alabama. They've seemed to always come back from down this year, and they did it again. On the first drive of the second half, they scored a touchdown in just 2 plays. Milroe would lead them to 13 more points on the next 3 drives. Meanwhile, Alabama's defense got some big stops, which prevented Tennessee from scoring. Their defense put in the dagger.
They need every yard they can get right now.
Milton, backside pressure, down he goes, the ball is out. It's going to be scooped, and it might be a score. It is! Campbell, touchdown, Alabama!
Just like that, Alabama's season is still alive, but Tennessee, who were held scoreless in the second half, lost 20-34 and are now eliminated from playoff contention. Anyway, the most hyped game coming into the week was a 7-seed Penn State at the 3-seed Ohio State. These two perfect teams with great defenses faced in a defensive battle. It seemed like Penn State's D made an early statement with a 60-yard scoop and score, but a defensive holding call overturned the touchdown. Instead, Ohio State would work their way to a touchdown and hold a 10-6 lead at half. Penn State's offense would be completely shut down in the second half, with punts and fumbles and turnover on downs. Ohio State's offense, meanwhile, wasn't playing well either. They had a punt a lot and were even stopped at the 1-yard line. But Marvin Harrison Jr. had a career-high 11 catches, and Ohio State did enough to win the game. Definitely a great showing by the Buckeyes defense, since they forced Penn State to punt 9 times in a 20-12 dub. For Penn State, this sad offensive showing doesn't quite send them out of the playoff race yet, since a win against the 2-seed Michigan can definitely help their chances. Anyway, I'll see you at Week 9. Oklahoma football was in deep trouble right now. A big loss 38-33 on the road might have just ruined their championship hopes. And this Saturday, they might have an even tougher opponent heading on the road to Oklahoma State. Now every game is a must-win, and the Sooners' title hopes seem very slim. But first, let's get some background before we see what Oklahoma's gonna have to do to make the postseason. Oklahoma has been a very winning franchise over their years, with 7 national titles in their history, the most recent one taking place in 2000 under Bob Stoops. They would continue being a powerhouse in the Big 12, and Stoops led the Sooners to multiple Big 12 title wins. Their success would continue into the hands of Lincoln Riley in the late 2010s, but in 2021, their dream season collapsed with a loss at Baylor. This would end up being Lincoln Riley's final season at Oklahoma, since he soon left to USC. This left the program in shambles in 2022. Last year, the 6-seed Sooners hosted Kansas State in Week 4 and were stunned. A week later, they got blown out by TCU, and then shut out by Texas, and Oklahoma was out of the top 25. But during this down year, Oklahoma received a transfer from UCF named Dillon Gabriel. Gabriel got the starting role and proved himself by throwing for almost 3,000 yards of 62% accuracy. So in the offseason, Gabriel bulked up and Oklahoma got more talented. Coach Brent Venables and the Sooners even received 3 5-star recruits in 2023, including Jackson Arnold as a potential backup QB. But it seemed like Oklahoma wouldn't need him, since Dillon Gabriel was playing lights off. The 20 seed stomped over Arkansas State 73-zip in the first game of the season. They would beat SMU, Tulsa, Cincinnati, and Iowa State to bring them to number 12. Then would come the Sooners' biggest challenge of the year, a game against their rival Texas in the Red River Showdown. This matchup of undefeated teams was in favor of the 3-seed Texas. In fact, last year they shut them out 49-zip. But the Sooners would keep up with Texas throughout the entire game, and they were down by 3 points, 30-27, with 1 minute left in the game. Gabriel ended up being clutch and led Oklahoma down the field to a 3-yard touchdown pass to Nick Anderson. The Sooners had completed the upset.
Goal line, pick it up, bat it down. Oklahoma wins it.
This crucial win brought Oklahoma all the way to number 6 in the country. The Sooners would struggle against UCF, barely squeaking by 31-29. They were lucky to win that one, but Oklahoma would have a challenge on the road. In Week 9, they'd have to go into the 5-2 Kansas on a rainy, gross day in Lawrence. Despite Oklahoma having an 18-game winning streak against Kansas, they struggled with yet another slow start. Dillon Gabriel, now considered a Heisman candidate, threw a pick-6 on their opening drive.
With a receiving touchdown as Gabriel fires. It's intercepted going the other way. Mello Dotson to the house.
Oklahoma realized that because of the rainy weather, they would have to fight on the ground. The passing game wouldn't get going, so they had to rely on their O-line blocking and running backs getting yards. The run game would dominate with 269 total rushing yards, but the passing game still wasn't working. After a storm delay, Oklahoma's offense would score over 30 points. However, the Sooners' defense would get exposed by Kansas, and they couldn't stop the Jayhawks. Missed tackles and big plays would be a problem for the Oklahoma D this entire game. With 2 minutes left, Kansas easily ran into the end zone and took a lead. Gabriel had a shot to win at the end, but his throws fell short.
His throw to the end zone, incomplete, a generational win for Kansas, finally toppling Oklahoma.
It was a tough day for Oklahoma football, and the weather conditions definitely prevented them from their full potential. I mean, Gabriel only threw the ball 19 times that game. But with this loss, the 6th seed dropped to 10. So how the Sooners can make the playoffs? First, they have to win out. The next 4 games are Oklahoma State, West Virginia, BYU, and TCU, all winnable. The toughest might be the game this Saturday at their rivals Oklahoma State. But blowing all of those teams out would look very good, and assuming that happens, they'll have a rematch against Texas in the Big 12 title game. They'd also have to win that. Meanwhile, they'd have to hope that the teams ahead of them fail. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, Oregon, Florida State, Texas, and Alabama are all ahead of them. So Oklahoma's title hopes don't look great right now, and this loss against Kansas might have just sent them out of the playoff race.
First down, here's Gordon again. Jump cut in the hole, busts it to the outside, and Gordon diving for the end zone. Touchdown, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, negative play on first down. Bowman running on second down, inside the 5. Bowman in for the Oklahoma State touchdown. The play caller, play action pass. Gabriel setting up, gets drilled as he launches it downfield into double coverage, and it's picked off. Intercepted by Dylan Smith. On 4th down, Gabriel on the run, throwing, Stoops, juggled it, caught it, but he's short. Oklahoma State's going to take over on downs, and a minute away from winning the final bedlam. Dylan Smith with a great tackle on Stoops on the perimeter.
Depending on what happens here on 3rd down.
3rd and goal. Back, firing, end zone! Caught! Touchdown!
Cook tries to buy himself time because there's nowhere to throw. He should have never released this football. You don't throw across your body rolling to the right.
He knows he's going to keep it, then watch his acceleration when he turns up right now. Boom!
Jace McClellan. Touchdown, Alabama.
C.J. Baxter in. Here's Murphy. Lobbing it deep. Murphy! Caught! Touchdown! Mitchell! With the little option. And it's a first down for Baxter and more! Burst of speed! C.J. Baxter, touchdown! Texas! 54 yards on 4th down. First down and 10 of the 18. Howard in trouble. Lost the ball, but with the pressure in the case. Will Howard winds up, delivers, and it's caught by Phillip Brooks. Turns it up, still running, dive, touchdown, K-State. What a play by Phillip Brooks. He can find his rhythm. Murphy. And intercepted. This time, Parrish. Howard in the gun. Hands it off. No. Play fake. Touchdown, Wildcats. Wow. Jace Brown. And it's good. Empty backfield. Howard looking. Howard scrambles. Howard lets it go. Incomplete. And Texas survives. 33-30. The final in overtime.
The college football playoff race is heating up, and coming into week 11, there were only 10 teams that could make the playoffs. Here's how each one of them did in week 11, and how they could make the top 4. The 10th best team with a chance to make the playoffs was Penn State. They had to beat a number 3 Michigan team that was without their head coach at home to boost their chances. However, just like that game against Ohio State, their offense was just non-existent. The Nittany Lions defense was doing their job and giving the offense good field position, but all that came of it were punts and disappointment. Penn State just got their second loss 24-15 and are now eliminated from the playoff race. But let's see if number 9 did any better, Ole Miss. Nope, they got blown out on the road and Georgia knocked out the Rebels. Number 8 is Alabama. They made light work of Kentucky and have a pretty easy schedule to end off the regular season. How the Crimson Tide can make it? Well, they already clinched the SEC West title, so they just gotta beat the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC Championship game. This is something Alabama has the talent to do, and then Alabama's got a locked-in spot. In the Pac-12, Oregon takes the number 7 spot. The only challenge the Ducks have faced are Washington, a game they narrowly lost. But every other team they've faced has been blown out by Oregon's high-powered offense. Ranked opponents like Colorado, Washington State, and Utah all got blown out. And it was no different for Caleb Williams and USC in week 11. Bo Nix cooked USC's defense with 400 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to go to 9-1. The team with the 6th best chances of making the playoffs are Washington, and I only say that because they have a tough schedule ahead of them. Essentially, all they have to do is win the Pac-12 title game and they're in. In week 11, they hosted a tough Utah team ranked number 13, who gave them a scare in the first half. But Michael Penix Jr. would lead his team to a 33-28 lead with 332 passing yards in the game. Of course, Washington scored on a pick 6 that was overturned because Alfonso Tupatula dropped the ball short of the end zone. But that ended up not mattering, since the Washington D forced a safety and shut down Utah's offense in the 4th. So the Huskies remain undefeated at 10-0, however, the challenge doesn't end, cause number 12 Oregon State is next on the schedule. The 5th best team are the Texas Longhorns. Even though they already lost a game against Oklahoma, the Longhorns are likely to win out with the schedule they have. If they do, and the teams ahead of them lose, I say Texas will make the playoffs. This Saturday, quarterback Quinn Ewers came back in a game they controlled against TCU and survived 29-26. Next up, the number 4 chances heading into week 11 is Michigan. Their defense played great and got a win on the road at Penn State without Coach Harbaugh. But things won't be smooth riding from here. A tough game on the road at Maryland followed by their rivalry game against Ohio State. And speaking of Ohio State, they easily beat Michigan State in week 11, and their next real challenge will be at Michigan. Of course, we can't predict what will happen until this game actually takes place on November 25th. But I do know whoever wins it has a lock-in playoff spot, and the loser I'm not sure about. The team with the 2nd best chances are the 2-time reigning national champs looking for another one, Georgia. The Bulldogs absolutely dismantled Ole Miss. Their offense under Carson Beck put up over 600 yards, and their defense shut down the Rebels. All that's left for the season is Tennessee on the road, and Alabama in the SEC Championship game, a game I think they could lose and still make the playoffs. and the team with the best shot at the playoffs are Florida State. Despite not actually being the best team in college football, FSU has stayed undefeated and just barely survived Miami in Week 11. Their next 2 games are very winnable, and they'll likely have to face Louisville in the Atlantic Coast Championship game, also winnable. If FSU doesn't lose a game, they're a lock-in for the playoffs. Anyway, I'll see you later. Rivalry weekend is always a fun week in college sports, where the games are hyped up even more. These games always result in crazy moments and fights between the rivals. So here are the best highlights from 2023's rivalry weekend. In the Civil War, Oregon State had a chance to ruin the Oregon Ducks season, but ended up getting blown out. Just north of that was the Apple Cup, played in Washington. Washington's undefeated season was threatened by Washington State, since quarterback Cameron Ward would lead the Cougars to a comeback in the 4th. Things looked bad for Washington when they decided to go for it on a 4th and 1 with 1 minute left in their own territory.
In so many ways for the game here. They will go, and they're going to go the other direction. Oh, it's Odunze! Rome Odunze!
Washington kicked a game winner and squeaked out a perfect regular season. Now they face Oregon to decide who makes the playoffs. Another good rivalry game was the Sunrise Showdown. Florida State was another team that had their undefeated season on the line, but this time they were without their starting quarterback Jordan Travis, who was out for the season. The Seminoles had a win in the Swamp to keep their hopes alive, and that's just what they did. Although they had a slow start, the defense led them to victory. Then came the game of the year, Ohio State at Michigan. This rivalry has gone back decades, and this game ended up being a classic that'll go in the record books. The undefeated Michigan Wolverines were without their head coach Jim Harbaugh, who was banned from the game. But they still had their best lineup on the field, led by J.J. McCarthy at QB and Blake Corum in the backfield. Meanwhile, Coach Ryan Day would have to prepare his undefeated Ohio State to win on the road at their rivals. In their 119th game, the first half was all Michigan. The Wolverines would immediately be set up with an easy touchdown with a Kyle McCord pick. They would score another touchdown on a controversial catch, and Ohio State would miss a field goal at the end of the half. With time ticking late in the 4th, Michigan would hold a slight lead 27-24. Michigan would burn the clock to 1 minute and kick a field goal to extend their lead to 6. Ohio State's hopes now seemed slim on the road, but Kyle McCord and all-star receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. would bring them into Michigan territory. But sadly, Ohio State threw an interception and lost the game. So Michigan will walk out with a win, a Big Ten title berth, and an almost guaranteed spot in the playoffs. Ohio State might be in trouble though. They are now sitting outside of the playoffs at number 6.
We're all disappointed. To come up short is certainly crushing, not only just because you invest your whole year in it. We know at Ohio State what this game means. There's a locker room in there that's devastated. It wasn't a lack of effort, but again, we didn't win the rushing yards, we didn't win the turnover battle, so you're not going to win the game.
Finally, why not include the classic Iron Bowl, where Alabama had to go on the road to Auburn. Despite Alabama being much better than Auburn, they struggled this entire game and found themselves in a 4th and long with their season on the line.
That's all it is. But there's a lot of airspace to cover for Milroe. Still looking. Firing. Near corner. It's caught! Touchdown, Alabama! Isaiah Bond! On a 4th and a mile!
Somehow, someway, Alabama is still in the playoff hunt. Subscribe, and I'll see you later. The college football playoffs seem to finally be set after a tight race heading into this weekend. Here I'll share who I think will move on, but before that, let's cover some of the champions. In the Conference USA, Liberty finished off an undefeated season in an explosive win. Miami, Ohio won the MAC title. Troy won the Sun Belt title. Boise State won the Mountain West title. And SMU won the AAC title. The college football playoff scenarios have been pretty complicated, but there is one guarantee. Washington versus Oregon. Win or go home. When Washington beat Oregon earlier this season, both teams knew that they'd meet again. Next thing you know, both teams win out and meet again in the Pac-12 title game. Number 3 Washington is undefeated and are led by the lefty quarterback Michael Penix Jr. And number 5 Oregon has been blowing everyone out with Heisman candidate Bo Nix. Surprisingly, Oregon were considered heavy favorites despite losing to the Huskies earlier this season. And Washington seemed to have a chip on their shoulder entering the game, since UW would shut out Oregon's offense and get up by a crazy 17 points, 20-3, late in the second quarter. The Ducks now found themselves with their playoff hopes on the line getting blown out. But on the last drive of the half, they scored a crucial touchdown. Now with momentum, Bo Nix came into the second half and led his team to a couple more touchdowns to take a 24-20 lead. In a tale of two halves, Washington controlled the first half and would lead by 17, but then Oregon scored 21 unanswered to snatch the lead. Now it was Washington's turn to score. Michael Penix would throw for a big gain to end the third and set up the Huskies in the red zone. Dylan Johnson broke the plane and reclaimed the lead. The Washington D would force a punt, and Penix would orchestrate another long drive, taking up 6 minutes of clock, that ended in a touchdown. This back and forth battle now favored Washington, but now it seemed like there wasn't enough time for Oregon to come back. Despite an explosive touchdown by Trayshawn Holden, Washington would convert on third down and seal the game. The Huskies came into this game as underdogs despite going undefeated and beating Oregon earlier this season. But now, the Huskies proved themselves and are now headed to the college football playoffs. Sadly, this 34-31 game is going to be the last ever game played in the historic Pac-12 conference. But we're certain this Oregon-Washington rivalry will continue in the Big Ten. The Texas Longhorns are a one-loss team with a shot at the playoffs. Texas rolled over Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game and jumped ahead of Ohio State. Because OSU doesn't play a game this week, they are now eliminated. Another one-loss team of a shot are Alabama, but they're gonna have to beat the number 1 seed Georgia, a team that hadn't lost a game in almost 2 years, 29 straight games. In the SEC championship game, Georgia struck first with an opening drive touchdown led by Carson Beck, but Alabama answered back.
Snap. He's got a wheel route to Jam Miller. Touchdown, Alabama.
At the end of the half, Georgia missed a 50-yard field goal, and Jalen Milroe brought the Tide down the field, converted a fourth down, and scored a touchdown to go up 10. Now down double digits, Georgia really needed to dominate the second half, so they can't make any mistakes. Georgia would now find themselves still down 10 with little time left. Even though they would cut the lead to 3 numerous times, Georgia's defense couldn't stop Alabama. Up 27-24, Milroe converted a first down and ran out the clock to end the game. Alabama just won a crucial game and took down the unstoppable Georgia Bulldogs. For the playoff race, it's kind of hard to say what will happen. I think Alabama should definitely make the playoffs, but can they jump Texas? I mean, Texas did beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Then Georgia has been number 1 for the whole year, so they can't just drop out of the playoff race just like that. It's too tight of a race to tell, so I predict Alabama makes the playoffs and Georgia doesn't. Michigan made light work of Iowa and shut them down 26-zip, so Michigan just earned a ticket into the playoffs. Then Florida State also won with their third-string quarterback in a sluggish game versus Louisville. The Seminoles are now undefeated to end the season. There's a big controversy for whether or not they should make the playoffs, even though they are perfect. Their first-string quarterback Jordan Travis is gone, and they are bound to get smoked in the playoffs. But because they are a Power 5 school and because they're undefeated, I think the College Football Selection Committee will have to put them in the playoffs. So Michigan is 1, Washington 2, Alabama 3, and Florida State 4. Of course, Texas and Georgia can easily be on this list, but this is just my opinion. Subscribe.